So you have to look at it as two things. You have to look at it as service. That's the transactional part. That's what I'm doing with my customers. That's what I'm doing with my employees, how I interact with them. Then there's experience. How am I investing in them? How am I taking time to help them grow? Am I setting something out for a path for growth? Or is it just transactional where, look, I got you a ping pong table. Look, I always buy you lunch. Look, I pay you well. But that doesn't create a great culture because that's just transactional. Welcome to another episode of the You're in Charge podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Pasch, and this is the podcast that helps new and experienced managers build the skills necessary to lead their high-performing teams. Each week, we tackle different topics and subjects and give you some tactical strategies that you can apply every single time to overcome some of these obstacles that you face as a leader. Today, we wanted to talk about a topic that seems to always come up for leaders at conferences, on other podcasts, but it's always spoken about in a very, I want to say, ethereal way, very conceptual. But no one really can explain to a lot of people not just what it is, but how to do it. And that is this idea of culture. We hear it all the time. I want to have my company really grow and have a wonderful culture. And I want to attract people because of the culture of my business. But what does that really mean? And how do you do it? And so today in this episode, we want to talk about what is culture, what I believe culture is, some of the myths that I've seen over time, some of the mistakes that I've made, as well as others, and more importantly, what you can do to build the culture for your company, for your team that you really desire, because you can build it. It is not just conceptual. It is tactical. It is consistency on your part. It's clarity on your part, but you can build the culture. Someone told me this and I thought it was really good, so I'm going to throw my glasses on here so I don't make sure I read it correctly. They told me, culture is the behavior that you reward, tolerate, and ignore. Let me repeat that. Culture is the behavior that you reward, you tolerate, or you ignore. And I think that's a great starting point because I think that is culture. Culture is not from the top down. It can't be leadership. It starts with leadership, but you can't force culture onto someone or your team. They have to live it. They have to believe that the day-to-day experience of working for your company allows them to feel seen, rewarded, encouraged, pushed, as well as creating an environment for collaboration and delivering a great product for your customers. Now, one thing that stood out early on, I think it was Richard Branson, Virgin Airlines, and very successful businessman. He always said, I focus on my employees. I don't focus on my customer, right? Employee experience over customer experience. That doesn't mean he's ignoring customer experience, but he said, if I don't take care of my employees, how are they going to take care of my customers? And I thought that was so brilliant because so often in organizations, as I said, I've made this mistake too. We're so focused on the customer experience and training everybody on how to take care of the customers. And, every day we talk about taking care of the customers. But yet, if we take a step backwards, are we taking care of our employees with that same focus and appreciation that we're trying to get them to do for our customers? So let's talk about some of the myths that I've heard, I've read about, I've seen, maybe I've even done them. One of the biggest myths around culture is, well, I'm going to create culture through perks. I'm going to have ping pong tables. I'm going to buy lunches. I'm going to have really a fun place for them to work. Beanbag chairs. I'm going to create all these pods and collaborations and huge offices. And I don't think that that's a bad thing, but that's not going to create culture. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to have a lot of places for me to go work and hang out, but really that's a piece of it, maybe, but too often that's what people think, because we've heard of the Googles of the world where there's always lunches and there's all of these different things that they can do. And it almost as if we're trying to keep everyone there, but that doesn't necessarily build culture in the day-to-day of my interactions with other people. One of the other ones is a culture of set it and forget it. We are going to have one meeting. We're going to talk about it. We're going to put some motivational posters up on the wall, and we're going to put something nice on our website, and we're going to talk about it every single day. But once I get that, and once I share that with my team, we can forget it, because that will build a good culture. And that's not it either. That might be a piece that you as a leader are saying, this is the vision of where we're going, but that's not the way to build culture. The other one is culture only really matters for the HR people, right? Because they're building these policies of how we have to protect our employees and what they deserve and their pay plans. And all of this are pieces, but it isn't just the one thing that's going to say, well, now I have a really good culture. So I think you have to think of building your culture as two things. Two sides of one coin, I would say. And coming up, as many of you know, longtime listeners, I've said this before, coming up through hospitality industry in New York City at some very high-end restaurants. I've worked at some magnificent ones, and I've had friends who have worked at some very high-end or as perceived great places because the customer experience was good, but their experience as waiters, bartenders, employees of that organization was not really good. So you have to look at it as two things. You have to look at it as service. That's the transactional part. That's what I'm doing with my customers. That's what I'm doing with my employees, how I interact with them. Then there's experience. How am I investing in them? How am I taking time to help them grow? Am I setting something out for a path for growth? Or is it just transactional where, look, I got you a ping pong table. Look, I always buy you lunch. Look, I pay you well. But that doesn't create a great culture because that's just transactional. There has to be both. Now, you can have a great experience and you're not paying someone, you're not giving them some things, but boy, you really talk to them every day. You really pump them up. That's not a great experience or culture either. Again, this is two sides to the coin. And you have to really think it through as a leader, because how you build a great culture is through what I call reverse engineering. How do I want my customers to think about me? And that's how we reverse engineer the process of a great customer experience, right? We say, this is what I want them to feel when they're done doing business with us. Well, what do I have to do, or my employees have to do, in order to make them feel that way? And then I take those actions, I build a process, then I hire individuals that can fulfill that process, then I train them on the process, I reward them, I continue to invest in them, I buy technology so they can do their job easier. And hopefully through all that interaction, I'm going to deliver a great customer experience. But the same thing can be done for your culture. How do I want my employees to feel working for me? When they leave at the end of the day, when they leave at the end of the week or month, how do I want them to feel about working for us? So what do I have to do to make them feel that way? And it's the same exercise, because again, it is some transactional investments, sitting in and having coaching sessions and meetings and giving them feedback on their performance, giving them a growth plan, right? All of those pieces I have to lay out, and they become processes. So when I onboard someone, I have to go over their pay plan. I have to talk to them about potential growth down the road. Now, there are companies who will say, why are you talking to someone about a growth plan? You just got them here for their job. You don't even know if they're going to make it. And I think that, especially in this day and age, people want to know where they're going. When I joined companies years and years ago, and I'm going to date myself here, you weren't told that. You just were happy to get a job. I'm going to work really hard, and maybe I'll know if there's a promotion out there. It's completely different nowadays because individuals have a lot of opportunities, have a lot of choices. They can start their own businesses. They could, again, Uber Eats and work with their friends. And now I'm seeing all of these individuals, younger individuals, starting to try to build companies with AI. So there's much more opportunity for them. So if you're not willing to talk to them, because that's what they want to know where is this company going to help me get to in a year, in 2 years, 3 years? That's what they want to know right out of the gate. That's part of the culture. So it's not just telling them that, it is building processes so that I am sitting with them on a monthly basis to give them feedback on their performance and coach them to get better. Again, I can't just say, there it is, good luck, put it on them. That's not creating the culture that you're really looking for. Now, another thing is that people stop there. Companies stop there. They say, well, we have processes in place, right? And we have policies, and that's going to create the culture. Again, you have to be actively involved. You as a leader, leadership, it's a two-way street. They have to be involved as employees, but you have to set the table to go out there, to invest in them, to coach them, to develop them. Set clear expectations. I think that's one of the biggest issues, I would say, that when I'm brought in to coach organizations, is I hear this all the time from people. And I'm not exaggerating because I heard it last week 3 or 4 times. Well, they should know. They've been doing this job for a long time. They should know. Well, if they're not doing it, somewhere there's a disconnect. Either somewhere along the line, they weren't trained properly and they're trying to figure it out. They forgot what to do, or they disagree with the style. One of those 3. But if you as a leader are not willing to sit down with them and walk through that process to understand, you're not going to have a good culture because you're frustrated, they're frustrated, and everybody's just trying to get by. And that person may eventually just leave because you're not helping them. You're not listening as the leader. So I think what you need, as I said, are the documented processes, but they also have to be focused on growth. One organization I work with in the automotive industry, I thought handled this brilliantly, even for very entry-level jobs, right? So they have Oil Change Express. It's an automotive dealership. And I noticed on the wall, they had 3 levels of someone who is an automotive oil change express, person at the store. And they had 3 different levels. And they had very clear things that this individual had to achieve in order to move to the next level. It also had what the salary bump would be or a pay plan change. Everything was very clear. And I asked him, why this? And he said, well, it started with my salespeople because once they had a good sales month, they were starting to be interested or coming to me and it being interested in, well, how do I move up to manager? And I'm thinking they only had 1 good month, and you don't want to discourage them. But you want to be able to say, well, put in a few more months and we'll have a conversation. And he said more and more people were asking. So I decided every job would have 3 levels. Every job would have it delineated what you needed to do, how long you needed to be in the current position, what goals, what metrics you had to achieve in order to move up to the next level. And he said having that posted took all of that questioning, I would say, uncertainty around what my next level is, what my next step is, because all you had to do was look up on the walls. But he said it's not just that, because I still needed the managers to sit with them and make sure they were clear on that next step. clear what was holding them back from the next step, clear how long they still had to do their current role to get to the next step. That started to build the culture because you started to have that focus. You started to have clarity. You started to have coaching. And if you don't have all three of those ongoing, you're not going to build culture. You're going to have, as I said earlier in the episode, you're going to have pieces of the culture, right? You're going to have I have some great policies. Oh, I have some great, little trinkets for them. Oh, I have a great pay plan for them, but it's not connected in an environment that's creating unity amongst the team, understanding how they work together, because ultimately, what do we want our employees to do? Deliver for our customers. Deliver products, deliver experiences. And especially if you're in an industry where part of your team is interacting face to face with customers, if you don't have a great culture, people can see it because your employees are not happy. So, what are some mistakes that I have made myself or seen in terms of trying to create a culture or falling prey to what I said earlier, the set it and forget it's, or giving pieces of this? The biggest one is inconsistency. We start morning meetings. We're going to go over metrics. We're going to shout out the people who did a great job. We're going to talk about our new hires. We're going to talk about wins we had, maybe even things that didn't go well because we want to coach our team on them. And then after about a week or two, you stop, or you find reasons not to have them anymore. And what that means to your employees is that is no longer important. You can say they should know. You could say, well, no, it's important to me as a leader. And my question would be, when was the last time you had meetings? When was the last time you communicated with your team? The things that are supposedly important to you. That's the glue to creating a culture. Consistency around what you think is important, right? Remember what I said. It's what behavior that you tolerate, you reward, or you ignore. And I'm ignoring the fact that we're not having meetings anymore. And yes, maybe there's something very important. But if you don't have to, you can't be there. Well, why can't someone else run the meeting for you? If you thought it was important to the culture, if you thought it was important to your team, why do you have to be the only one that can do it? Someone else could do it. It should happen every single day. So consistency around everything helps build that culture. Number two, as I said earlier, lack of clarity. Don't assume they know. Map it out. Be very clear. What behaviors, what actions that you need to deliver in order to generate that great experience for the customers. You as a leader, what are the actions you have to do in order to generate this great culture? You have to be very clear, because if you're frustrated with someone's performance, my first question is, do they know what they're supposed to do? If they're not sure of what, then shame on you. You need to fix that. You need to make sure that they're very clear on what they're doing, because our goal really is for our team to become more efficient at their jobs every day. But if they don't know what they're supposed to do, or they have some slight idea, or they're not 100% sure, how can they become more efficient on something they're not sure of what they're supposed to be doing? This one also is a tough one, and I've seen it happen a lot, and it revolves around tough conversations. Sometimes someone's not performing well. They're underperforming, or maybe they're just not feeling part of the team. Whatever it is your job as a leader to have these conversations. And sometimes they're tough. Sometimes they're uncomfortable. Sometimes they're with your top performers because they're exhibiting behavior that goes against what you're trying to build as your culture. But they feel, because they're a top performer, that those rules don't apply to them. And in a lot of situations, you as a leader ignore that behavior. Remember, I'm going to keep hitting on that. You ignore that behavior. You put up with that behavior because they sell, or they're a top performer, or they're a veteran, or whatever it is. Remember, you're ignoring it. And as long as you're clear on that, you have to understand that's going to impact the culture. I think I've told the story, and I used to, in a previous role, I put up with this. Top performers. And finally, I couldn't anymore. There was a gentleman, was the top salesperson at this company that I worked for. But he had a small group of 4 or 5 other little friends, and they, or coworkers. They'd all hang out together. And I watched how they idolized that person. And I watched how they looked up. And he started coming late, started leaving early, kept just cutting corners. And I just kept allowing that because of what sales he generated. And finally, I couldn't do it anymore. And I had to have the tough conversation. And of course, he pushed back and look at my numbers, look what I'm doing. I said, but you're missing the point. This is impacting. So I'm going to give you one last warning. If you don't do this, you can't work here. And of course, he thought I was joking because I had been ignoring it, empty threats previously. And I created that behavior in him. So finally, he did it again, and I let him go. And he was stunned. And of course, bluster, walking out. Don't worry, y'all. You'll get me back here sooner or later. And he left. Now, what happened? 2 things. One, that group of 4 or 5 people, their performance picked up because they thought if they're getting rid of this top performer, they're surely going to get rid of us. But more importantly, what I didn't realize is so many other people came up and thanked me. The people who were just quiet, never mentioned anything. Because what they were feeling was, it's not fair that person got away with this. And just because we didn't sell up a few more notches, getting close to where that person was, that we have to follow the rules. They don't. And that was creating a toxic culture, but it was hidden below the surface. I never would have seen it, but they were not happy. And as soon as that person went, their respect for me in their eyes grew. Some laughed and said, took you long enough. But it was a great lesson because sometimes your culture is underperforming or not what you think of. It looks great on the surface, but underneath it's not. And that's a rot. And it's usually because you're not willing to have the tough conversations, especially with your top people. You're allowing some of this behavior. People are not going to raise their hands and cause a disturbance, but they're just not going to be happy. And their performance is not going to drop, but it's going to incrementally go down because of this feeling that I, as a leader, say one thing and do something completely different. The last one, again, is a feedback loop. The more you talk, the more you ask questions, the better you can find all of those things that I just said underneath the surface. Ask questions. Create a little circle of employees from every department, not just your top performers, everyone from what you would consider entry level all the way to top performers. Get them together and just constantly ask them, what are you hearing? What could we do better? What does our team need from me, from the company, in order to help them perform better? So when it comes to your employees, I think, as I said, I'll speak for myself, is, excuse me, I took it for granted at times. I thought they realized how much I appreciated them. I assumed they knew that they were doing a good job. And I think that the more appreciation, doesn't mean you have to appreciate every little thing like, oh, thanks for showing up for work on time. I'm talking about things that they've done. Maybe they took on a project and they did a great job on it. Shout them out in front of everybody. Maybe just give them a little note or a card, or just go over to them and look them in the eyes and thank them. Appreciation goes a long way to help build that culture because they know you see them, that you appreciate them. And especially when you're in a leadership position, sometimes they think, oh, I'm not important enough for them to talk to me. Break down those barriers, go out, shake hands. The more you know about their families, the more you know about their hobbies, what their goals are. Help them achieve what they want. Create that environment of we are all going to succeed, even if, and this was another situation I had at one time. There was a young lady who worked for me. She was on a path to get promoted, but I already had someone in the position. And she came to me and said, I have a job offer. Now, some people would say, yeah, you try to keep her. I knew she had to go take that job. So I encouraged her. I told her she was ready to take this job. You'd be silly not to take this job. You always have a home here, but you have to go. And every year or so, I get a note saying, thank you for giving me that push. You had created such an environment for all of us to learn and to push ourselves, but you weren't afraid to also let us leave so that we could be successful. And that meant so much to me because that's what I was hoping I was trying to create in the organization as well. As I said, as we wind down, there's a lot of this is the word that comes to mind always is a coach, not a manager. The more that you can coach someone, when you coach somebody, you invest in them. But in order for them to be successful, you have to be clear on what the expectations are, right? Think of if you're playing sports, this is the playbook. We have to be very clear what your piece to the whole, play is going to be. And I need you to do this. And I'm going to coach you. But that also means having tough conversations and bringing them over and celebrating the wins, but also coaching up those mistakes, coaching up that effort, coaching up that knowledge. And you have to do it. And there are a lot of times where we as leaders, as I said, I constantly still have to remind myself, don't take it for granted that they know how you feel about them, or more importantly, don't take for granted that they're growing. Because sometimes some of you who are here, we might be more veteran in our career. We're down the road a little bit further. These folks are still younger. Think of the people who helped you on your journey. Create that culture. Just think of the jobs that you've had, any job or any classroom or any team where you say, man, that coach, that leader, that teacher created such a great environment for us. Think back of what they did. And then on the flip side, if you said, man, I hated working at that. I hated being on that team. That person was not a good coach, not a good leader. That was a horrible environment. What did they do specifically to create that environment? Again, remember, all of this is actions. Actions cause feelings. You've heard me say that a lot. Actions, reality, cause culture, a good one or a bad one. But you need that framework. You got to be clear from a leader. What am I trying to create here? What does it look like? If I shut my eyes and I pictured it, what am I seeing? What are the teams doing? How do I react? How do I invest? How do I coach my employees? That's what you want to do. That's how you build culture. And it is not a quick thing. It takes time. Going back to consistency. You have to do it every single day. Reinforce it every day. Make adjustments when it's not working. Celebrate when it is. Make sure you're having the tough conversations if you need to. Make sure you're continuing to push people to grow. Show them that path. Invest in them. Build them up. Again, it doesn't mean you have to do everything, but you should have a team of people who are helping you. Get everybody from the entry level all the way up to the top, helping create an organization that people want to come work at and want to be part of and are excited to come to work every single day. All right. So I hope you found value in that. I hope you found it tactical enough. We go over this in the book, The Road to Sold, a little bit about creating this environment, how to coach, how to train, how to develop. So if you haven't gotten your copy yet, go to Amazon and get that as well. But I think this is the real goal of a leader, is taking some of these concepts and breaking them down into tactical things that people can do. Because you can't stand up and build culture. You can't just stand next to me here and say, all right, this is culture. But you can talk about specifics of saying, was I clear about what it was? Am I coaching them? Are we having meetings? Am I shouting out? All of those pieces, everything that we were talking about earlier, why it fails, because everybody has a piece and you're not linking it all together. So again, I hope you found value. As I say at the end of every episode, I want to thank the people here at Black Swallowtail Studios for helping put this together, and also PCG Digital for editing the episode. Please make sure you share this out. I'm sure there's someone in your network that can benefit from this. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure that you click the notification button, click subscribe, leave a comment. A lot of times topics like this are brought up or turn into episodes because people in the comments say, hey, I'm in this situation. What are your thoughts on this? And we've had a lot of episodes. We're going to have some episodes coming up based on people's comments. So please put your comment in there. If you're just listening on whatever podcast platform you are, please make sure you review it. And that helps circulate it around. As I said, just don't forget to share. I want to thank you so much. I know there's a lot of other places and podcasts and things that you can listen to for learning and entertainment, but the fact that you spend some time with me means the world. And as I do say at the end of every episode, being a leader is not the title. It is about what you do every day, how you lead, how you show up, what you say on a consistent basis, making sure that others want to follow you, want to learn from you. You have a lot to share. Go do it. I'll see you next week.